Egerton, the acting here, especially by our female protagonist, is quite excellent. It also has really strong dialogue. I think possibly its biggest strength is that, coupled with the wonderful performance. I love how this piece so much feels like a one sided conversation where the man says very little, and yet by that little that he says is actually saying so much about his indifference towards this relationship. And then, of course, that leads to his ultimate rejection of her. It is so heartbreaking, but so beautifully executed nonetheless. Well done.
This ship is for Egerton. This is a very cruel depiction of a relationship's demise. They have great performances, quite an engaging and original script. We go from a very romantic, connected interaction and just friendship and getting along into this very relatable plot where it's quite raw and unapologetically tragic. And that conversation at the end felt like talking to a wall, which was just very relatable, quite realistic of the divergent expectations for this middle aged couple. It was cleverly put and I really enjoyed it.
Edgerton, I thought this was really, really fascinating that you kind of have like the different points, the kind of like highs and lows in a relationship. And I liked that you kind of had not no context for the timeline because clearly one of the conversations was at the end of the relationship. So, just by logic, the other part that you're saying has to be at some point before that. But I thought it was really interesting how they kind of played with the timeline there and you saw different kind of moments that they had clearly experienced, at some time previously. But what really struck me was when she was talking and saying like having like we don't talk about certain things or like we've done this and we've done this and like it would have been fine if we had talked about that but we never addressed it, we never talked about it. And just this concept of like having a relationship with someone or staying with somebody or being together for x amount of time, that you're in a serious relationship, you're living with them, or it's been years, or whatever you consider yourself to be in a serious relationship with them. But if you're not having those kind of deep conversations, if you're not having the hard conversations, if you're not having the real conversations, then what is your relationship kind of built on and what is it currently standing on? And like me personally, I've experienced and friends of mine have experienced relationships that didn't necessarily have those conversations and all of them have failed. And I think that to have a true partnership and a true relationship, you have to have those kinds of conversations. Otherwise, you kind of end up where they did. And, resentment builds and miscommunication happens and not feeling like you're on the same page happens. And things just kind of build up over time where you get to the place where you're like, there's no coming back. And I think that a lot of that can be kind of, at least in this case, with this film, can be rooted back to not having the real conversations. Because, like I said, if you're not having those kind of harder, deeper moments where you're, discussing things, trying to figure stuff out together, if you're not having that, then what is your relationship standing on? And I really, really enjoyed the film because I thought it was very real. And for me personally, like I said, it brought back and was relatable to things that I've experienced and things that my friends have experienced. So it was very easy for me to kind of understand where this was all coming from, where this kind of, how this kind of conversation comes to be, like how you get to that point in your relationship. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was really, really fantastic.
Egerton. This is was a very interesting watch because it was a little bit different on the flashing back to like past times because it wasn't super clear to me at first that this was what was happening. So I kind of liked it because it wasn't so obvious and jerky or anything. It was very interesting and I wasn't quite sure where it was headed, even though she was sitting at the table by herself. in the beginning, and honestly it felt like that was the end, but we were flashing back kind of to the prior conversation in the restaurant. I hope that makes sense. It just didn't feel typical. It wasn't linear, and it was really interesting in that regard. So it was a little painful to watch because it did feel like obviously this woman was more invested in this relationship, but yet she was also on depressants, antidepressants, and he seemed really checked out, really kind of checked out from the relationship, almost like, why is he even there? But it was kind of painful because I think there was a lot, as a female, I could relate to, especially when she says, please fight for us. I thought it was a really strong dialogue throughout the whole film. So really good writing, really nice performances by both. I thought they were very subtle and realistic, and really nice lighting, especially in the restaurant. I like the lighting a lot in the restaurant. And at the end, when she turned to the camera, it looked like she became younger. Was that supposed to be her younger self feeling like she had wasted a lot of time with this guy? Yeah, I think there are many times that women just want to feel like, I'm telling you how I feel, I'm being open, and I want you to fight for us. I want you to say, I'm worth fighting for, we're worth fighting for. And a lot of times we see these, romantic comedies where they kind of go that way, and then the guy steps up to the plate, and it ends just really nicely, wrapped up in a bow. And I think life isn't like that. So this is definitely more realistic and definitely heartbreaking for her. So great job.
This film is called Egerton. This was a heartbreaking short. Excellent narrative with flashback scenes. So much enjoyment in the flashbacks and so much tension in the here and now scenes. Fabulous locations, pace, and direction. I thought the two leads were excellent, especially the woman's monologue. I also love the dramatic soundtrack, adding to the sentiment of the story. I would love to see this film extended to a feature. Great job, Egerton. Check it out.